to Citizens Forum. I'd like to start by thanking our volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes this program happen every week. This is being filmed on Tuesday, November the 17th, just a few days after the attack in Paris that killed over 100 people, wounded dozens and dozens of others. We'd like to talk about that, but we're going to talk about it from a different perspective, and a perspective that is very important. We want to talk about the possibility that this is a false flag operation. I'm not saying that it is, but that's got to be considered. There has to be a full and honest investigation, an independent investigation of what happened. And I'm really wondering why our media in Canada just seems to be pushing anger and fear and hate and racism and war at this point in time. The reason that we can consider that this is a false flag operation is that they, and when I say they, I mean the people who run the United States and the people who run NATO, the Western governments and intelligence agencies, have done it before. They've done exactly this before. And Walter is going to say a few words about Operation Gladio, which is the system that was used.
Yeah, Jack, I mean, it's quite a complex subject, and here we are trying to examine this in a thoughtful manner. And as you said, we're not absolutely saying this is what happened, but we are going down this trail a little bit. So
it's got to be considered.
That's right. So I'm not going to try to qualify every sentence. I'm going to examine this issue with this lens. Now, what happened after the Second World War? Just roughly, the Western powers were concerned about Soviet expansion, basically.
Or they wanted to keep themselves in power and make sure they were never pushed aside by democracy.
That's another way to put it.
Democracy, not
That's another way to put it. But
yeah.
they claimed that they were concerned about Soviet expansionism and Soviet-style communism. So they left in place a lot of combatants in Western Europe that were fascists and Nazis, and they were very willing to be ready to fight anything that was going to start up in Western Europe that looked like socialism or communism.
Or democracy.
Or democracy. So anyway, this Operation Gladio was formed, and it was basically loosely controlled by NATO, but by others that are hard to identify. But NATO was part of those agencies. Now, in the 1960s and 1970s, this is when it really gets interesting. Gladio carried out several attacks on civilians, particularly in Italy. We had a situation where they walked into a supermarket, gunmen, looked a lot like these guys, walked into a supermarket, started killing everybody for no apparent reason, but it really caused a lot of fear. And then they blamed it on... So
this was at the time, I guess this was a communist group that was blamed, because they were the enemy at that point.
They blamed this Red Brigade, and the Red Brigade really didn't have much organization, but they were scapegoated. There was also a bombing in the train station in Bologna in 1980 that killed 80 people. Again, just a straight-ahead attack on civilians, blamed on the Red Brigade.
And who was behind this bombing in Bologna?
Well, this is... where I think you have some information too on this, but this Operation Gladio was blamed for this.
And when we say blamed, we mean they were blamed by the governments in Europe.
That's right. And
Gladio was being run by NATO.
More or less by NATO, but this is of discussion. Now, I think you have a statement from the European Parliament about Gladio, just so people know that this is not some wild story. These are facts, well established, and I think we're going to see if people go to the URLs that we're putting up, if they can look at the information thoughtfully. This is well documented that this operation was undergoing.
Yeah, so I'll just read a few sentences from this. On November 22nd, 1990, the European Parliament passed a resolution on Operation Gladio. It's called Joint Resolution Replacing B3-2021 and several others. A, having regard to the revelation by several European governments of the existence for 40 years of a clandestine parallel intelligence and armed operations organization in several member states of the community. And whereas for over 40 years this organization has escaped all democratic controls and has been run by the secret services of these states in collaboration with NATO, and C, fearing the danger that such clandestine network may have interfered illegally in the internal political affairs of member states or may still do so. And it goes on. And the last point is that the European Parliament instructs its president to forward this resolution to the Commission, the Council, the Secretary General of NATO, the governments of the member states, and the United States government. So I think as we watch this story being told by our media, the media that we know we can't really trust on important issues, and how there is no questions being asked. They are blaming it on ISIS, and we have to keep in mind that a lot of people say that ISIS is funded by the United States and its allies, and personally, I believe that that certainly may be true. I can't say that it is true, but it's so widely reported in other parts of the world that it has to be considered. It's not a secret to our media, but they will not tell it to us. So the question of who is ISIS and who is running ISIS has got to be kept in mind as our media spreads hate towards people who are Muslims. And we just have to keep in mind the possibility that this is a false flag operation. There has to be an independent investigation. It's like the entire world has been cast a little onto its side by what happened, and they seem to be pushing for war, the war of civilizations that was talked about by the so-called neocons in the United States prior to 9/11. They seem to be moving us in those directions. And while we're focused on fighting ISIS, the corporations are taking over the world.
Yeah. Now, I mean, look, we just should be asking more questions. That's all. Let's continue asking questions. For instance, Operation Gladio, why would we assume that they have just gone away and dispersed? You know, there's no evidence of that whatsoever. And you know, why wouldn't they have just become more sophisticated with the new intelligence gathering, abilities that they have now? You know, it's no reason for us to assume that they have.
They have a history of carrying out bombing
Exactly.
attacks in order to get what they want.
Now look at the Paris killings. Look at the Charlie Hebdo killings. Look at the London bombings in 2007. If you look at some of the key elements, they all fit a certain pattern, and we could talk more about that. But I think the thing is this. They're blaming the Islamic State. They're saying these are the terrorists. And the question that popped into my mind just a few moments ago is, are the people who created the Islamic State, could they not also be the same people who created Operation Gladio? Could they possibly be the same entity? Could they possibly be, in fact, the same intelligence agencies?
Yeah. And so the Western, especially the United States and the CIA and the NATO intelligence agencies, created Operation Gladio and used it basically to keep themselves in power over decades. A lot of people say that the U.S. and its allies are funding and created ISIS. It's certainly possible given what we know about how they, Osama bin Laden worked for the CIA. I mean, that seems to be just historical fact. So we're at such an important moment, it seems, right now, where we're being pushed, it seems, into a war against.
Exactly. But you know, Jack, I really think the same interests are there The Islamic State, to me, is created just in the same way as they've created all sorts of other fabrications. It's a very convenient enemy.
Yes.
And now that we can blame these bombings on them,
Yes.
we already know they're capable of pulling these bombings off, and this is well documented.
And when you say they, that the Western nations.
Well, yes. Well,
yes,
the
they've done
people,
it
the
before.
intelligence agencies that created Operation Gladio.
Yes.
You know, and you can get into bore down into that and talk for ages about it, but the interests are there. I don't think this is a wild speculation. Now, the other thing I think we should always do, and this is not a bad idea, is that it's a crime. What happened in Paris was a crime. There was people were killed. There was criminal activity. And, you know, we should be asking the fundamental questions in a crime. Who had the motive to do the crime? Who had the opportunity? Who had the ability to do it? Who profits from the crime? Who pays from the crime? I mean, these are standard investigation questions that anybody that's going to investigate this should be asking these questions. And by the way, everybody's a suspect until you rule them out. The range of suspects narrows pretty quickly. And all of a sudden you do realize that these people behind Operation Gladio appear to fit the bill quite well for motive and opportunity and capabilities to pull off the crime. They fit the bill quite well. Now, this is just standard investigation techniques. We're not launching off into any wild other ideas. We're just sticking with the facts. Why can't we do that, Jack? Why is it that our media has taken this away from us? And as you said, why can't we have an independent investigation of this crime by people that we can trust? I don't think at this point we can trust the French Secret Service or the French police or any involvement there, because they are at this point still a suspect.
Yeah, I think that we have to just ask the questions. We can't accept the official story. The official story has been a lie forever. I mean, from the fact that if you Google Bush, Hitler, and Guardian, you'll see the story in the British newspaper about how corporate America funded Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. So if you know that, then everything else becomes possible. I mean, if corporate America was funding Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, which is just historic fact, then how can we say that how can we believe the official story that's being told to us now about what happened in Paris? We've got to get beyond that and below that, because this is just too dangerous a time. The media is pushing fear and anger and hate and war.
Well, yeah, and
we've got to be careful.
People that are thinking clearly have to step ahead, step up here. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid of the media and this wave of hatred that's sweeping over people. Just stay clear-headed, and I think we just got to keep asking the questions. You know, something that occurred to me. You know, of course, in this scenario, these sort of attacks that happened that put fear in the hearts of people, and then they give up all their civil liberties to the government, perhaps the very same people who did the crime, and you know, they basically say, please help us, protect us from a terrorist. And I was wondering about this, because I was talking to people about it, and that one frightening scenario is the terrorists want to harm us, and we have to do something to take them.
And people believe it.
But what is even more frightening, and I think why we can't go there, what's even more frightening is the scenario that we're painting, the possible scenario that the very agencies in government that are supposed to be protecting us are in fact attacking us. And I think that is a block for most people. It's too frightening to go there. They would rather stay back in the old story of the terrorists and all that. And I think we're locked into this paradigm that we're really in trouble right now, because those of us that are trying to ask these questions, you know, are being vilified. And we're just trying to dig in here and trying to find out who actually pulled off this crime. And I think right now there has to be a lot more courage being shown by people who want to get to the truth. We have to examine this issue, and we have to avoid what could be a very, very serious set of circumstances that could occur now with involving warfare and other things that are very, very dangerous.
Yeah. I completely agree. So I don't disagree with people who believe the official story. I mean, you know, I believed it myself for a big part of my life. But we have to know the truth. That's all I'm saying, and I think that's all you're saying. Let's find out the truth. The official story may not be that truth. And before this segment ends, just one more thing. There seems to be a surge of racism and anti-Muslim propaganda in the media. And we have a volunteer reporter who is preparing a report about this issue. And we invite you to send us any comment and recommendation to assist in this little reporting job. If you notice what you think is anti-Arab and anti-Muslim reporting in our corporate media, please just send an email, because if that's the case, then I mean that is the promulgation of possibly the promulgation of hate and shouldn't be allowed. So thank you very much for watching this segment of Citizens. Welcome back. In this segment, we're going to be talking with Dr. Slavi Stanev. We're going to be talking about physical health, and hopefully in the end, we're going to be talking about what we can do here in Victoria to work on that important issue of good physical health, especially for children and young people, but for all of us, really. So, Dr. Stanev, welcome.
Okay, thank you.
And you're Bulgarian.
I'm from
so
Bulgaria, yeah.
maybe you can tell us something about your background in sports.
I am also associate professor of National Sports Academy. This is National Sport University. I am PhD and Doctor Pedagogical Sciences. I write in my life 120 articles and 8 books. Now I am write books for kinematic and dynamic structure, technique, combative sport for International Olympic Committee. Sorry. But I work in coach national team 7 years. 7 years in Bulgarian.
Coaching wrestling.
Wrestling coach. Yeah. I have 55 medallion, but this 5 medallion, 15 medallion gold medals gold. I am working many countries: Germany, Syria, Peru, Pakistan, and 2007, 1 year I am coaching national wrestling team in Canada. My student Rita Up take 5 position in American Championship and participate to Olympic Games in Beijing. And to me, more important, physical health, because now if you're not physical health better, you're not working 8, 10, 12 hours, 14 hours. In 19th century, 96% energy produced from people and home animals. Now only 1% produced for people and animals.
And all the rest is oil, gas, and coal.
Yeah, this is more important, car and this.
Yeah, we used to work.
Yeah. But in Greece, many years ago, if you're not physical perfect, you'll not borrow good position in the government. Aristotle, Platon, physical perfect. Famous bacteriologist Louis Pasteur, as a result, heart mental work, receive home hemorrhage. After this problem, he begins start physical exercise. Pastor lived 30 years, and these years he make phenomenal result. This is because every day training physical exercise. Now, Roy Rothschild, this is Roy Rothschild, this is from USA, very famous strong man. When he was 13 years, he have spinal paralysis. He begins start physical exercise, and after 5-6 years, he stayed very strong man. Steve Jobs, every day working 14-16 hours. Bill Gates, when he younger, 15-17 hours. If not good physical health, this person not working, because this is more important. Children begin, or if you begin training physical exercise. If your children begin training physical exercise, if you stay teenager, adult, they continue. This is more important for health in this moment.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about sports training and sports schools in Bulgaria?
In 1970, last century, in Bulgaria start program for training children in school. First, open in my university faculty for coaches. In this faculty, students study 4 years for coach. And if you finish second years student, he takes second profession, physical teacher, sport journalist, sport law, and kinesiotherapist, Canadian physiotherapist. If you finish university, he take 2 profession. This student go working in school. In school program, a lot of sport who is participate Bulgarian Summer Olympic Games. If you teacher not understand sport, coach come in and together teach children. After this, have competition in school, city, province, federal. If these children in school, if you have child who is bigger talent in sport, maybe basketball, wrestling, swimming, and another sports, this child first go in sport medical clinic, take medical exam, second pass exam to strength, technique, psychologist, and third, if you have spina bifida, this is problem spinal column, and morbus lateral, this is problem in knee. This child not start in special school. This sports school coach only finish university, not another school coach. More important in children training qualification coach. Second problem, girl and boys, one group training girl, one group training boy. Because if you mix these methods in my country, not better. Why? Because biological age and passport age much difference in girl and boys, because need training separate group in physical exercise. If a girl 7-9 years, you have very good methods and X-ray, and these X-rays coach and doctor analyze it in this X-ray, and after 10 years they know what is your told. This sport, volleyball, basketball, this is more important. Gymnastics and short person. This is more important when training children. This is basis. If you a lot of children training physical exercise, this is nature very strong. This child state adult, this train very hard. A lot of profession.
So Bulgaria's had, with these methods, good results in international competition,
Yeah.
if those are important.
This result give this program give result after 17 years. In 1988, in Olympic Games Seoul in South Korea, Bulgaria take third position in the world. Bulgaria have gold medal in athletics, swimming, and athletics, swimming, gymnastics, wrestling, weightlifting, and another sports. This is Olympic champion state Urdanka Donkova, swimmer Dangalakova, and Urdan Yovchev participate 6 Olympic Games and take much medal into Bulgarian, and this is program.
How about sports clubs that work with just the average child who
Yeah.
wants to be healthy?
And now in only sport club and together in school working in child. In sport club, same working very good qualification coaches in child. Because if you training not better, child not continue training in this physical
Yeah, I think
exercise.
that's something very important for here is that the people who are doing the coaching, I remember when I was a kid and playing baseball, you know, our coaches were like I am now. They didn't really know a lot. And I think they weren't able to teach us because
Yeah.
so it wasn't
But,
much.
And a lot of sport coach more important, same in school. If a teacher better, the students same better.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe child have talent. If a coach not better, not development this sport. Same baseball, same golf, a lot of sport.
And for me, the important thing isn't so much the training of the elite athletes, but the training of all citizens, not training, but teaching, so we are able to have access to just good physical exercise to make us healthy,
Yeah.
fit, and strong.
No, this the only physical exercise training. This is problem in the teacher in school. I think if you finish school, I think maybe 2 hours teacher, physical teacher in my country, child training minimum three times per week.
So 3 times per week after school,
After school,
in
yeah.
school.
In school,
to-
yeah. In school.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
school.
just
In school. This
yeah.
is more important because this is friendly, one class, work, study together, and
Yeah.
training together.
I
this
wish
is
we
better.
would have had that. I mean, I can remember when I was a kid, kind of wishing we had that kind of program, and as far as I know, we still don't
Yeah.
have it.
This is problem. This is problem in government. Government make this program because if this teacher working after school, maybe small pay small money. This.
Yeah. But it
If you
should be
if you
more
not program
emphasis
in
on it.
government and this teacher not working, this is normal situation. If volunteer, this is not bigger.
Yeah.
It's not seriously.
Well, it's something, Slavi, thank you very much for talking about this.
Yeah.
And for me, it's one of the most important things in the world is to put more emphasis just onto good health and exercise. Thank you very much.
But
Yeah. And thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome back. Our guest in this segment is John Farquharson. And John, we're going to be talking about the thing we always talk about, which is sewage treatment.
Right.
It's of phenomenal importance because we're looking at $1 billion, and we've got to make sure that we get, I think, the best possible deal price-wise, but even more important to me is the best environmental deal. So maybe you can just tell us what's going on, because I think most people don't know.
Well, welcome to the club in the sense of not knowing what's going on. As best I can tell, there's a March of 2016 deadline for this $83 million that is attached to a 3P Canada fund. The federal government has given them about $250 million, as has the province. But apparently all of those deals, the money doesn't come until the plant is built. But this one apparently that's due March 31st is signed, and it's already been delayed 1 year. We're supposed to have had a plan in place a year ago. So now this March 31st deadline seems to be driving everything, and come heck or high water, they're going to have a plan in place, signed off by March 31st.
In order to get $83 million from
In order that
P3 Canada.
in $83 million.
Now, does that
P3
mean
Canada.
that this, what we end up with, is going to be in some way a P3? Because I haven't really heard that
Well,
before.
I mean, the difficulty is finding out, what exactly, how they're going to fully cost, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6, various options.
But if we're getting money from P3 Canada, is it going to be a P3 in some way, or do you know?
Well, what I, in terms of the 3P puzzle, if you will, the new ministers in the Prime Minister's new cabinet recently got what they call mandate letters. And basically they tell, the Prime Minister tells the minister, said, here's your mission for the next, 3 or 4 years, right? This is your mandate, okay? And it was really quite interesting because one of the mandate letters that went to the Minister of Infrastructure talked about removing the P3 screen for infrastructure projects.
Wow, that's huge. That's great.
Well,
Before, everything that was going to be getting money from the federal government had to be at least considered for a P3.
it had to go through the 3P screen.
Right,
Now
and now they're
talking
saying
about,
goodbye to that.
well, that's what it says in the mandate letter. Changes to speed up applications to the Building Canada Fund, including, quote, removing the P3 screen for projects. But more interesting for me is a line from the Environment and Climate Change Minister's letter, which talks about treating our fresh water as a precious resource and making investments in the best wastewater treatment technologies available, end quote. Okay, so the one that went to another minister, I think Minister of Oceans and whatever else, choose the best technologies available to reduce environmental impacts. So I'm hard-pressed to see how you're going to go forward and to the federal government with a centralized secondary, which certainly doesn't meet these very high environmental standards, on the excuse that you're trying to meet a 3P funding deadline for March 31st when they're possibly going to take the P3 screen off the table. So I don't understand how that's going to all unfold, personally. I don't see it making much sense.
Wow, I mean, to me that is fundamentally important because once again, people laugh when I say we're being rushed through a process because, hey, it's already taken 10 years, we've gotten nowhere. But that's not our fault.
No.
That's the fault of the people who were trying to give us $1 billion project that did no environmental good. So the people of the city managed to stop that. And now we're trying to, I think people want to start from scratch and get the system that makes sense and gives us a good price as well. And, you keep hearing, well, yeah, we've taken so long already. But again, that's not our fault. Here we are. Let's make sure we do the right things. But as you told me earlier, things are actually moving ahead quite quickly. And maybe you can just give us the timeline.
Well, like I say, those are the timelines, right? They're going to have supposedly all of the options costed to the point where they can then engage the public, and the public can then make, I guess, informed decisions.
So you told me December 5th was something.
That's the date right now for all these costed options.
So
with an engagement process to follow, on December 6th, so that people can begin to find out about these various fully costed options. But in terms of the level of being fully costed, like for me, a fully costed option, for example, would be a completely tertiary-based system, and it would be costed over the full life cycle of the project. That's 50 years. And all of the revenue streams would also be costed. So that means that all of the resource recovery that's going to be associated with a tertiary system would have to be, like I say, fully costed 50 years out. That's hard to do, and that's very time consuming.
Well, it's
to do.
impossible to do. You can't.
Well, I mean, with any
we don't
degree.
even know if there's going to be a planet in 50 years going
Good
the
point.
way things are going.
But there are, there is, there
Yeah.
are methods for doing it. For example, there are some private sector players who will say, hey, you give us the contract for this particular resource for the next 40 years or whatever, and we're willing to take the risk, okay, and that it will, make us some money, make us a profit. But there's a risk there. And then questions arise such as, well, if the private sector is willing to take a risk on a resource or the worth of that resource 20, 30 years out, then, let them have it. It takes it off our plate. So my point is that the costing, I think, for the public to make informed decisions, I just can't see how they're going to prepare it based on what they've come to the table with as recently as, like a month ago. So it's disconcerting. But here's this wonderful opportunity from the new federal government. As I just read some quotes from the various mandate letters, I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, I don't know why.
Great opportunity to
Say, okay, that's great. If you're insisting that we have, the highest, the best wastewater technologies available, we're going to need a little bit more time.
to look at them. Are we looking at them
To
now?
cost them. Well, I was on a while ago and they were sort of looking at them. They had these, sort of a show and tell with some private sector vendors about 3 weeks ago down at the CRD. But it was pretty high level. Like these guys had a PowerPoint, 20 slides. But in terms of detailed costing and analysis, not even begun to scratch the surface. So again, how they're going to provide this to a public and ask them to make informed, fully informed decisions without this level of costing, I just don't see how it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, my own feeling is that the public isn't really wanted in this process, although we've been told that we're the most important part of the process, because I participated in the first part of the process.
Yeah, but there's two questions. They want the public, but they don't. I don't think they want a fully informed public.
Yes.
They want the public to come in, give them a minimal amount of information. You were at some of the the site selection option meetings, workshops, that sort of thing. The amount of information that you had about a particular site was laughable.
Yes.
And so, but what happened is that then the public chose, and so then the powers that be can say, hey, they chose these
And
options.
we didn't really even choose. I mean, I was at the meetings. We didn't really choose, but we were later told that we had made choices.
Oh, that's a surprise to me.
Yeah. So you've been you've been
Spending way too long in this file.
Yes, yes, for a long time. So from what you've seen put forward in terms of technologies, are there some that seem to be reasonably cheap, give us a good tertiary system, and are better than the secondary system that the CRD still seems to be putting forward as the best choice?
Well, the one that I've read the most about and seen most impressed by is certainly the tertiary level treatment, but not just partial tertiary. Tertiary throughout the whole system, and then you can put the water. You don't have to build new outfalls for the near potable water. You can put the water into inbound waterways. But then there's another issue with that, and that's the fact that a lot of the technologies, the more advanced technologies, they're 20 years ahead of the regulations. For example, as far as I know, a dockside green cranks out tertiary level water through these membranes, right? But the regulations apparently read that to test the effluent has to be tested where it eventually ends up in the ocean, as opposed to when it comes out of the plant. Because when the water comes out of the plant at Dockside Green, it goes into these ponds where the otters poop, and the ducks poop, and the geese poop. So it goes through there, and then I think it eventually ends up in the Selkirk waterway. So that's where the testing is done, in the Selkirk waterway, after this near potable water. And you've maybe seen some people on TV doing a demonstration drinking of the water. So they test it. But the thing is, so those regulations were put in place, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, before this technology was available.
Okay, do you think there's a chance that we are going to end up with something that is far less good than what we could have?
Well, we're going to find out probably the week after, next, at the next Core Area Liquid Waste Management Review, or whatever it's called, the Sewage Committee, because Director Vic Derman has once again got a motion before the Core Area, before that committee, that calls for a fully and independent evaluation of the viability of integrated waste approaches and other innovative solution sets in a manner that does not compromise the interest of the applicants. So basically asking for a really thorough look at what's out there in the private sector. So we'll see how that vote goes.
What do you think? So this is a very important vote. So Vic Derman is asking to open the process up once again.
Well, to the
really take a look at what's out there.
Like have meaningful engagement of the private sector, like meaningful, not just a 20-minute PowerPoint, but significant, in-depth engagement.
When is that meeting going to happen?
This motion goes before that sewage committee, I think next Wednesday.
So that's November, today's the 17th, 24th, 25th.
Yeah, 25th, 26th.
Okay, so everybody, there's something that we should all be keeping our eyes on.
Very important motion.
Yeah, a very important motion put forward by Vic Derman to take a look at what's available. We cannot afford to make a mistake, and there seem to be some pretty powerful forces moving us towards a mistake. John, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome back. This is the usual Walter and Jack segment, although it's number 2 in the list today. I'd just like to start off by talking a little bit about the homeless situation. To me, homelessness is deliberate. It's being deliberately created by the people who run our country. It's murder. There's absolutely no need for it. Now, when you talk about solving it, of course, it's such a big problem that the solutions become more difficult. But certainly when it started, there was no difficulty. There was no need for it in the first place. There's lots of money in this society. As I mentioned before, the Royal Bank makes $2.5 billion in profit every 3 months now. If 1 billion, or let's say 2 billion, just from that one bank, was taken for 1 year out of their 10 billion in profit, that amount could almost build the amount of housing we need to solve the homeless crisis. It's not a homeless crisis, it's murder. It's the murder of our fellow citizens by the people who run the country. And I think a part of the reason for homelessness is they've just underbuilt the housing supply quite deliberately. I mean, certainly there must be a shortage, or who would be paying these exorbitant prices, because for everybody else, they've pushed the price up. So there's no housing, the people on the bottom, there's nothing for them whatsoever, and everybody else, they're forcing us to pay massively high prices. Huge fortunes are being made. Everybody is, young buyers who are just starting off are being forced into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt just to buy a roof over their head. And in the end, the economic disaster is going to be massive, and they're going to do it to us. And it's all just another scam. It's terrible, and we've got to do better as a society.
And it's too bad that local municipalities are scurrying around trying to pick up the pieces, trying to figure out where they can allow people to put tents. And, it's such a sad state of affairs. Now, the Trudeau government has promised to look into issues like this, and really, although they were talking about the middle class, this is a situation where they really have to focus in on the most vulnerable in our society. And I've always said this, is that the measurement of a civilized society is how we treat the most disadvantaged and people in our society. And a lot of homelessness and stuff is not a permanent condition. It's people just are put into a very bad economic situation due to loss of jobs or poor health or family issues. There's a lot of reasons why people are homeless, and these people deserve our support. We're not that far from standing out on that street ourselves. So, you know, this is so vitally important that we all focus in on this, and I think there's a chance now that if the federal government were to come up with some money, let's face it, and not try to make the municipal taxpayers pick up these tabs, you know, we might have a chance of solving some of these problems.
Absolutely. It's got to come from the federal and provincial governments. You wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on in Shawnigan Lake with the deliberate poisoning of their water supply by a Christy Clark government.
Anyway, I'm going to hold up this headline and Jack can read it.
Water warning brings calls to close landfill.
The headline is so confusing. This should be a front page headline that should say, landfill site polluting Shawnigan Lake.
Yeah.
You know, water warnings are now been issued in Shawnigan Lake. Don't drink the water. But if you read the article, you know, it says Island Health issued a do not use water advisory on Friday due to a suspected overflow of water from the landfill site owned by Cobble Hill Holdings Limited. Okay. And then they go on saying the company has a permit. Now, the Environment Minister, Mary Polak, faced renewed calls Monday to shut down the landfill for these reasons. Polak told the legislature that preliminary tests show no threat to human health from water leaving the site. So which is it here? The health authorities are saying don't drink the water. Mary Polak and her associates seem to know better.
Mary Polak should not be the Minister of Health. Mary Polak should be a Minister of Environment. She should be immediately removed from that position, just as Christy Clark should be removed from her position. They're planning to put 5 million tons, I think, 5 million tons of contaminated landfill onto a site just several miles from Shawnigan Lake and uphill of the lake. So we all know where over time the contamination is going to flow. And it's even closer to Victoria's water supply, which is Souk Lake, than it is to Shawnigan Lake. The entire situation is so corrupt and so crazy, it makes you think that they are deliberately trying to destroy fresh water in this province, because that's what they're doing with the fracking, which uses huge amounts of water, which is happening in the eastern parts of the province. And I mean, why would anybody do this? And yet our own government, our own Ministry of Environment keeps saying, oh, it's all safe. It's only 5 million tons of contaminated soil. Are they crazy?
You know, they're hauling this soil away from other places because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, they're not just digging this up for fun. They're digging it out of building sites and contaminated sites, loaded with like PCBs and chemicals and God knows what else from different industrial sites and stuff like that. This stuff is just really disgusting. And I mean, you know, really, they shouldn't bury this in the paper with a weird headline like this. This should be a front page headline. The Times columns should step up and help these people out to protect their health. This is a huge threat to their health.
It's a threat to all of our health.
Exactly.
And you know, really, it brings into question the even bigger story. You know, once you have contaminated waste from all the chemicals and poisons that are produced by our corporate industrial society, I mean, it doesn't matter where you put them. Sooner or later, they're all going to break into the environment, just as with Mount Poly. Tons and tons and tons of poison. The breakdown at Fukushima, that ongoing disaster which the media won't even talk about. They still do not even know where those melted radioactive cores are. They can't find them, and they can't deal with them if they do find them. There's radiation spewing into the Pacific Ocean every day, and the media doesn't say a word. I mean, how crazy is our society to allow
Yeah.
this kind of stuff to go on?
Well, this is an indication. This is just another example. We could open the paper almost any day of the week, dig into page 5 or 8.
How do we move ahead out of this?
Well, right now, I think the political climate is shifting, and I think if, say, for instance, the CBC, who seems to have buckled to the corporate agenda under the Harper regime, well, they don't have to do that anymore. Come on, CBC, pick up this story, go with it. Report honestly on this. We just need one news agency to act responsibly. The others might get embarrassed into doing it. But, right now, it doesn't seem to be happening. And, the CBC is pretty pathetic right now, Jack, in the news department. It's really bad. The CBC's running those awful stories about ISIS and racism and all that, and not being hard on these stories. They're really soft around the edges on it. So this is just another indication that there's just no will in the media to report honestly.
So how can, because you said there is a political shift, but even more recently there's been another political shift because of the attacks in Paris.
Yeah.
Everything has shifted, and I think it's the people who run the world. They don't want a political shift to the left.
Oh, absolutely.
They want a political shift to the right. And in fact, that is exactly what's happening right now. Europe is being destabilized quite deliberately. The right-wing parties are gaining favor. Right now, I mean, if I look at Europe, especially like even 2 months ago, I'd say that's where the hope for our one hope for us, because at least in some areas they're progressive. They won't sign the free trade agreements like Canada is always willing to do. They won't let in the genetically contaminated foods. They've had, much better social programs than we have. And I think all of that is now going to be under attack by this destabilization that is being forced into Europe. And it really is scary, because we can do better. We've got to move in better directions in Canada and the United States and Europe and the Middle East, all of us together. We've got to throw off this yoke of these lunatics who run the world and re-democratize and start to get what people really want, which is peace and good government and community.
And a safe environment. I mean, like what John was just talking about earlier about the sewage treatment plant. These bad things are happening to us directly. And those forces that are pushing this stuff down our throats are the same forces that are possibly pulling off these attacks like in Paris. Now, the thing is that if you, as we had mentioned before, if you look at that scenario and you say, okay, what is happening in Paris? Why might that have happened right now? Is there a possibility that there are some people that want to shift the narrative away from talking about climate change, with the big climate change conference coming up in Paris, to shift that discussion away from climate change, which is talking about getting away from fossil fuels, talking about getting into renewable energy? That's a shift from war, because all this warfare is all about fossil fuels. And getting into renewable energy, by the way, which is diversified, decentralized, nobody there to control it. So is there a motive to change that narrative right now? I think there's a really powerful motive to try to do that, to put people back in that fearful place of relying on their governments and to not democratize, as you say. Well, we're up under this oppressive fear, we can't have a true democracy anywhere. And I think there are strong motives there for these sort of things to happen. I think citizens should be very concerned. And coming back to Victoria, now I just looked in the paper today, Jack, and I just mentioned a couple of headlines, because in the letters to the editor. After the events that have happened here in the last few days, some of the headlines are saying, or the letters are saying, don't bring our fighter jets home yet. Like, Mr. Trudeau, please don't withdraw the fighter jets from Syria. Bombing will make the world safer. That's another title.
No.
PM should reconsider withdrawing forces. Trudeau shouldn't be hasty with refugees. All of a sudden is this big pushback, you know, by those people that are standing to lose a lot. And I think we have to realize this is the real game that's going on, in my view. The evidence is just too powerful. And I hope Trudeau and the people that are going to Paris are resilient and don't buy in. I think their policies were good before the election. We voted for them. We put them in there. They got a majority. They got a mandate to carry them out, and they don't have to change their minds.
The media, thank you, Walter. The media is using the refugee issue now to divide our country. I understand that their propaganda is very powerful. We just have to keep an open mind and seek the truth of what's actually happening on so many fronts and so many issues has got to come through. Thanks, Walter.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
And thanks for watching this week's Citizens Forum.